The bullies make the fatal error of picking on the new girl. She fights like no other. Katie Summers stood at the entrance of Westview High School, taking a deep breath before walking through the main doors. The building was bigger than her old school, with 3 floors and wide hallways now filling up with students. It was her first day as a senior at a new school, and her stomach felt tight with worry. "Just get through this year," she whispered to herself as she adjusted her worn backpack on her shoulder. Her father's job had moved them across the country, and Katie had no choice but to start over. Again. Katie was average height with brown hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore jeans, a plain blue t-shirt, and sneakers that had seen better days. Nothing about her appearance stood out, which was exactly how she wanted it. The less attention, the better. What no one at Westview High could know by looking at her was that Katie had trained in mixed martial arts for 8 years. She had won several regional competitions and could take down opponents twice her size. Her teacher back home had called her a natural fighter with the best instincts he'd ever seen. But Katie didn't talk about that part of her life. She never had to use her skills outside the training gym, and she hoped to keep it that way. Katie found the main office where a friendly woman with gray hair gave her a class schedule and a small map of the school. "First days are tough, dear, but you'll find your way," the woman said with a kind smile. "If you need anything, come back and ask for Mrs. Bradley." Katie nodded and thanked her before heading to her first class. As she walked down the hallway, she felt eyes on her. Being the new girl meant being watched, judged, and talked about. She kept her head up and her face calm, not showing how uncomfortable the attention made her feel. Near a row of blue lockers, a group of students were talking loudly and laughing. At the center stood a tall boy with short blonde hair and an expensive-looking jacket. Even without being told, Katie could tell he was important here. The way other students moved around him, the nervous glances, the forced laughter at his jokes, he was clearly someone with power. "That's Zach Phillips," a voice said beside Katie. She turned to see a thin boy with glasses. "He basically runs the school. His dad owns half the town." "Thanks for the warning," Katie said. The boy smiled. "I'm Pete, by the way. Also new this year, but I started last month." "Katie, just started today." "Good luck," Pete said before hurrying off to class. As Katie passed Zach's group, she kept her eyes forward, but she still noticed when Zach nudged his friend and nodded in her direction. The friend, tall with dark hair and a football jacket, looked Katie up and down with a smirk. "Fresh meat," she heard one of them say, followed by laughter. Katie ignored them and continued walking. She had dealt with boys like that before. The best approach was to stay invisible. Her first 2 classes went by quickly. Katie sat in the back, took notes, and spoke only when called on by teachers. In her 3rd class English literature, she noticed a girl being bothered by another group of students. The girl was small, with curly red hair and glasses. She hunched over her desk as if trying to disappear while 3 girls behind her whispered and laughed. When the class ended, Katie saw one of the girls stick out her foot, tripping the redhead and sending her books flying across the floor. The ow. 3 girls laughed and walked away, leaving their victim to gather her things alone. Katie hesitated, then walked over and helped pick up the scattered papers. "Thanks," the girl said quietly, not making eye contact. "No problem. I'm Katie." "Olivia," the girl replied, finally looking up. "You're new." Katie nodded. "That obvious, huh? Small school. Everyone knows everyone." Olivia clutched her books to her chest. "Word of advice? Stay away from Heather Mills and her friends, and definitely stay away from her boyfriend, Zach." "The blonde guy with the attitude? Already planning to," Katie said. Olivia looked over Katie's shoulder and her face paled. Too late. Katie turned to see a girl with long black hair walking toward them. She wore expensive clothes and too much makeup. 2 other girls followed close behind her like shadows. "Making friends with the art freak?" the girl asked, looking at Katie with cold eyes. "Bad choice for your first day." Katie said nothing, just looked at the girl steadily. "I'm Heather," the girl continued, clearly annoyed by Katie's silence. "And you're sitting at our lunch table. We always sit by the windows." I wasn't planning to, Katie said calmly. Heather's eyes narrowed. It wasn't a question. New girls sit with us so we can decide if they're worth knowing. Thanks for the offer, but I'll find my own seat, Katie said, turning away. She felt a hand grab her arm. Nobody walks away from me, Heather hissed. Katie looked down at Heather's hand, then back at her face. She didn't say anything, but something in her expression made Heather let go. Whatever, Heather said, trying to sound like she didn't care. Enjoy eating with the losers. When Heather and her friends were gone, Olivia stared at Katie with wide eyes. Nobody talks to Heather like that. Her dad is the school principal. Katie shrugged. I'm not looking for trouble. I just want to be left alone. They don't leave people alone, Olivia warned, especially people who don't play by their rules. The cafeteria was loud and crowded when Katie entered at lunchtime. She got her food and looked for an empty table. She spotted Olivia sitting alone in a corner and considered joining her, but decided against it. Being seen with Olivia would only draw more attention from Heather and her friends. Katie needed to stay under the radar. She found a small table near the back of the room and sat down. From there, she could see everything. Zach and his friends at one table, surrounded by other students trying to be part of their group. Heather and her girls at the window table, watching the room like queens, on their thrones. Olivia alone, eating quickly with her head down. Katie noticed how other students moved through the space, the invisible lines that couldn't be crossed, the hierarchy that everyone seemed to understand. It was the same at every school, just with different players. A sudden burst of laughter drew her attention. Zach had grabbed someone's backpack and was holding it up high while a younger boy jumped trying to reach it. No teachers were around to stop him. Katie watched as Zach's friend, the tall one from earlier, dumped the contents of the backpack onto the floor. The younger boy looked close to tears as he knelt to gather his things while other students either laughed or looked away. For a moment, Katie felt the familiar urge to help, to step in and stop the bullying. Her hands tightened into fists under the table, but she forced herself to stay seated. Getting involved would only make her a target. She had promised her dad no more fighting, no more trouble. Across the room, Heather caught Katie watching and whispered something to her friends. They all turned to look at Katie, their expressions nothing but mean. Katie didn't look away. She met their stares calmly until they turned back to their lunch. By the end of the day, Katie had a clear picture of Westview High. Zach Phillips and his friends ruled through fear and intimidation. Heather Mills and her group controlled the social ladder. Teachers either didn't see the bullying or chose to ignore it. And students like Olivia just tried to survive each day without being noticed. As Katie walked to her locker after the final bell, she spotted Zach leaning against the wall nearby, watching her. When their eyes met, he smiled in a way that made her skin crawl. "See you tomorrow, new girl," he called out as she passed. Katie didn't respond. She got what she needed from her locker and left the building quickly. As she walked home, she thought about her promise to her dad. No trouble, no fighting. Keep your head down and just get through the year. But deep down, Katie knew it wouldn't be that simple. People like Zach and Heather didn't let people stay invisible. They needed targets, victims, people to control, and for some reason they had already noticed her. Just get through the year, she repeated to herself as she walked up the driveway to her new house. But for the first time, she wondered if staying invisible was really the right choice. Maybe some bullies needed to be stood up to. Maybe some fights were worth having. She pushed the thought away as she opened the front door. One day at a time. Tomorrow would be another day at Westview High, and Katie Summers would be ready for whatever came her way. The bullies make the fatal error of picking on the new girl. She fights like no other. 3 days had passed since Katie's first day at Westview High. She had settled into a routine of keeping to herself, speaking only when necessary, and watching everything. She ate lunch alone, walked quickly between classes, and avoided the areas where Zach and his friends usually gathered. So far, her plan to stay invisible was working, until Wednesday morning. Katie was at her locker, switching books for her next class, when she felt someone standing behind her. The hallway had suddenly gone quiet. She took a deep breath before turning around. Heather Mills stood there with her two friends, Ashley Price and Diana Wells. All three girls wore similar outfits, with expensive brands and perfect makeup. "Nice shoes," Heather said, looking down at Katie's worn sneakers. "Did you get them at the dollar store?" Ashley and Diana laughed on cue, like they had practiced it. Katie said nothing. She turned back to her locker and continued organizing her books. "Hey, I'm talking to you, new girl," Heather said, her voice getting sharper. She reached out and pushed Katie's shoulder. Katie felt the push and steadied herself easily. She had taken much harder hits in her training. She turned around slowly and faced Heather. "I heard you," Katie said in a calm voice. "I just don't care what you think about my shoes." Students who were watching from nearby went silent. No one talked to Heather that way. Heather's face turned red with anger. "Who do you think you are?" Before Katie could answer, a new voice joined the conversation. "Having trouble with the new charity case?" It was Zach, walking up with Greg Matthews and Steve Foster, his two main followers. Zach put his arm around Heather and smiled at Katie. It wasn't a friendly smile. Katie closed her locker and tried to walk away, but Greg and Steve moved to block her path. "We haven't properly welcomed you to Westview," Zach said, stepping closer to Katie. "You should know how things work around here." Katie looked Zach straight in the eyes. "I think I've figured it out," she said. "Now excuse me, I have class." She tried to step around the boys, but Steve knocked the books from her hands. They scattered across the floor as several students laughed. Katie looked at her books, then at Steve. She didn't look angry or upset. Her face was calm, which seemed to confuse the bullies. People usually cried or got angry when they were picked on. Slowly, Katie bent down and gathered her books. No one helped her. "This isn't over, new girl," Heather said as Katie stood up with her books. Katie looked at each of them. Zach, Heather, Greg, Steve, Ashley, and Diana. She nodded once. "You're right about that," she said quietly as she walked away. The rest of the day, Katie could feel eyes on her. People whispered when she walked by. By lunchtime, everyone had heard about how she had stood up to Heather and Zach. Some students looked at her with respect, others with worry, as if they knew what was coming. Katie sat alone at lunch again, but today she noticed Olivia watching her from across the room. When their eyes met, Olivia quickly looked away. After school, Katie walked to her locker to get her things. The hallway was nearly empty. As she closed her locker, she heard footsteps approaching. It was Pete, the boy who had warned her about Zach on her first day. "You shouldn't have talked back to them," Pete said, looking nervous. "They're going to make your life miserable now." "I'm not afraid of them," Katie said. Pete shook his head. "You should be. Last year, a girl named Megan stood up to Heather. 2 weeks later, Megan transferred to another school. They posted fake pictures of her online, spread rumors, got her kicked off the volleyball team. It was awful." Katie frowned. "Why doesn't anyone stop them? Zach's dad donates a lot of money to the school, and Heather's dad is the principal. They can do whatever they want." Pete looked over his shoulder. "Look, I just wanted to warn you. Be careful." After Pete left, Katie walked home thinking about what he had said. She had dealt with bullies before, but never ones with so much power and protection. Maybe staying invisible wasn't an option anymore. That night, Katie did something she hadn't done in months. She went down to the basement where her dad had set up a small workout area with a punching bag. She wrapped her hands carefully and began to train, moving through the fighting forms her teacher had taught her. Punch, block, kick. Her body remembered everything. "Katie?" Her dad stood at the bottom of the stairs watching her. "I thought you had given that up." Katie stopped and wiped sweat from her forehead. "Just staying in shape." Her dad looked worried. "Is everything okay at school?" "Fine," Katie lied. "Just the usual new kid stuff." Her dad didn't look convinced, but he nodded. "Dinner in 20 minutes. The next day at school, Katie found something written on her locker in black marker. "Loser." She wiped it off with a tissue and went to class without reacting. In math class, someone had put gum on her seat. She saw it before sitting down and moved to another desk without saying anything. At lunch, she couldn't find her backpack where she had left it. After searching for 10 minutes, she found it in a trash can, her books and papers covered in food waste. Katie cleaned up what she could. In the bathroom, as she washed her hands, Olivia walked in. "They did that to your backpack, didn't they?" Olivia asked. Katie nodded. "It will get worse," Olivia said. "That's how they work. They start small, then build up." "Why are you telling me this?" Katie asked. Olivia looked down at her hands. "Because no one warned me when I started here, and because you were nice to me on your first day." Katie thought for a moment. "Have they done things like this to you?" Olivia nodded. "For 2 years now. Ever. Since I won the art contest that Heather thought she should win. They take my homework, ruin my projects, call me names. Last month they stole my sketchbook and threw it in a toilet." "Why don't you tell someone?" Katie asked. Olivia gave a small, sad laugh. "I did. Teachers, counselors, even the principal. No one does anything. They say there's no proof, or that I'm too sensitive, or that it's just normal teenage stuff." Katie felt anger rising inside her. Not the hot, quick kind that leads to mistakes, but the cold, steady kind that helps you think clearly. "It's not right," Katie said. "It's just how things are here," Olivia replied. "You seem smart. If you ignore them and don't fight back, maybe they'll get bored and leave you alone eventually." "Is that what you do? Ignore them and hope they get bored?" Olivia looked away. "It's the only thing I can do." But Katie knew there were other options. She had skills that could stop bullies like Zach and Heather. She had promised her dad no more fighting, but watching someone else get hurt and doing nothing, that felt wrong too. The next day was Friday. Katie arrived at school to find a group of students gathered near her locker, laughing. When they saw her coming, they moved aside so she could see what was funny. Someone had printed photos of a woman who was very overweight and taped them all over Katie's locker with the words "Katie's mom" written on them. Katie felt a flash of real anger now. Her mother had died 3 years ago after a long illness. These people knew nothing about her or her loss. She removed the photos one by one, her face showing no emotion despite the laughter around her. When she was done, she turned to find Zach and his friends watching from down the hall, smirking. For the first time since coming to Westview, Katie walked directly toward them instead of away. The hallway grew quiet as students watched. Katie stopped in front of Zach. "My mother is dead," she said in a clear voice that carried down the hallway. "She died of cancer 3 years ago." The smirk disappeared from Zach's face, replaced by uncertainty. "I don't care what you do to me," Katie continued, "but you should know who you're messing with before you cross certain lines." She turned and walked away, leaving Zach and his friends in uncomfortable silence. For the rest of the day, Katie noticed the other students looking at her differently, some with sympathy, others with new respect. She had shown emotion for the first time, had stood up to Zach in front of everyone. As she was leaving school that afternoon, Olivia caught up to her. "That was brave, what you did today," Olivia said. Katie shrugged. "It needed to be said. They'll make you pay for embarrassing them," Olivia warned. Katie looked back at the school building. "Let them try. The bullies make the fatal error of picking on the new girl. She fights like no other." The weekend passed quietly for Katie. She spent Saturday helping her dad fix up their new house and Sunday training in the basement. The punching bag felt good under her fists, familiar and safe. With each punch and kick, Katie let out some of the anger that had been building inside her. Monday morning came too soon. Katie walked to school with a small notebook in her backpack that hadn't been there before. She had decided to start keeping track of everything Zach, Heather, and their friends did. Times, dates, witnesses. She would document it all. The hallways were busy when Katie arrived. She kept her eyes open, expecting some kind of payback for standing up to Zach on Friday. But nothing happened. Her locker was clean, her seat in. First period was gum-free and no one bothered her in the hallway. By lunchtime, Katie was confused. She sat at her usual table alone and watched Zach's group across the room. They were laughing and talking as if she didn't exist. "They're planning something," a voice said. Olivia stood next to Katie's table with her lunch tray. "Can I sit?" Katie nodded and Olivia sat down. "What do you mean they're planning something?" Katie asked. "Zach doesn't let people embarrass him. Neither does Heather." Olivia picked at her food nervously. "They're not ignoring you, they're just waiting for the right moment." Katie thought about this. "I'm not afraid of them." "Maybe you should be," Olivia said. "Last year, a boy named Jake stood up to Zach. A week later, Jake was found with drugs in his locker. Everyone knew Zach planted them there, but Jake still got suspended. His parents sent him to another school." Katie frowned. "That's awful." "That's Zach," Olivia said. "He doesn't fight his own battles. He finds other ways to hurt people." As they were talking, Katie noticed Ashley, one of Heather's friends, taking pictures of them with her phone. "We're being watched," Katie said. Olivia turned pale. "Great. Now I'm on their radar too." "I'm sorry," Katie said. "You don't have to sit with me." "It's too late now," Olivia said with a small smile. "Besides, it's nice not eating alone for once." For the rest of the week, Katie and Olivia ate lunch together. They discovered they had similar taste in music and books. Olivia showed Katie some of her artwork, and Katie was impressed by how talented she was. "You could be a real artist someday," Katie told her. Olivia blushed. "That's the dream. But my parents want me to study something practical in college." "You should follow your heart," Katie said. "What about you?" Olivia asked. "What do you want to do after high school?" Katie thought for a moment. "I'm not sure yet. Maybe something with sports or fitness." She didn't mention her martial arts training. It still felt like a secret she needed to keep. Every day, Katie wrote in her notebook, recording the small ways Zach and his friends were starting to target both her and Olivia. A shoulder check in the hallway, missing homework, whispers and pointing. It was all small stuff. Nothing that would get them in trouble, but it was constant. On Thursday, Katie was walking to gym class when she heard crying from the girls' bathroom. She pushed open the door to find Olivia sitting on the floor, her clothes wet and her sketchbook soaking in a puddle of water. "What happened?" Katie asked, helping Olivia up. "Heather and Diana," Olivia said through tears. "They cornered me in here and dumped water all over me in my bag. My sketchbook was inside." Katie helped Olivia dry her sketchbook with paper towels. Many of the drawings were ruined, the colors bleeding together, the paper warping as it dried. "Worked on these for months," Olivia said, her voice breaking. "My art teacher was going to help me put together a portfolio for college applications." Katie felt that cold anger again, stronger this time. "We need to tell someone," she said. "Who?" "Principal Mills is Heather's father. The teachers never do anything." Olivia wiped her eyes. "It's no use. Then we need to stand up to them ourselves," Katie said. Olivia shook her head. "I can't. I'm not brave like you." "Yes, you are," Katie said firmly. "You just haven't had a chance to show it yet." The next day at lunch, Katie sat with Olivia as usual. But today, instead of their usual corner table, Katie chose one in the center of the cafeteria where everyone could see them. "What are you doing?" Olivia whispered, looking nervous. "Making a point," Katie replied. It didn't take long for Heather to notice them. She whispered to Zach, who looked over with narrowed eyes. After a few minutes, Zach and his whole group approached Katie and Olivia's table. "Look at this," Heather said loudly. "The new girl and the art freak think they can sit wherever they want now." Katie didn't look up from her lunch. "The cafeteria is for everyone, Heather." "Not this table," Zach said, putting his hands on the edge and leaning down. "We sit here on Fridays." Now Katie looked up. "I don't see your names on it." The cafeteria had gone quiet. Everyone was watching. "You think you're tough, don't you?" Zach said, his voice getting angry. "Just because you made that speech about your mom." "I don't think I'm tough," Katie said calmly. "I just don't think you are." Zach's face turned red. "You don't know anything about me." "I know bullies," Katie said, still calm. I know they pick on people because they're scared inside. They need to make others feel small so they can feel big. Heather stepped forward now. You think you're so smart, but you're just a nobody from nowhere with cheap clothes and no friends. Katie smiled a little. Is that the best you can do, Heather? Comment on my clothes again? That's not very creative. Heather's eyes widened in shock. No one talked to her that way. You're making a big mistake, Zach said, his voice low and threatening. No, Katie said, standing up slowly. You made the mistake when you decided to pick on people who never did anything to you, when you ruined Olivia's artwork, when you made fun of my dead mother. Students around them were pulling out phones, recording everything. What are you going to do about it? Zach challenged. Right now? Nothing, Katie said. But if you or your friends touch me or Olivia again, you'll regret it. Zach laughed and suddenly swept his arm across the table, knocking Katie's lunch tray to the floor. What are you going to do about that? He asked with a smirk. The cafeteria was completely silent now. Everyone was waiting for Katie to cry or run away. Instead, she looked Zach straight in the eye. That was your only warning, she said clearly. Before Zach could respond, a teacher walked into the cafeteria and frowned at the scene. What's going on here? The teacher asked. Nothing, Mr. Brown, Zach said quickly. All innocence. Just an accident. Mr. Brown looked at the mess on the floor, then at Katie. Is that right, Miss Summers? Katie kept her eyes on Zach as she answered. Yes, sir. Just an accident. The teacher didn't look convinced but moved on. Zach and his friends walked away laughing. Why did you say it was an accident? Olivia asked as they cleaned up the mess. Because getting a teacher involved won't solve anything, Katie said. They need to learn a real lesson. What kind of lesson? Olivia asked, looking worried. Katie didn't answer right away. She was thinking about her promise to her dad about not fighting. But some fights couldn't be avoided. Some bullies wouldn't stop until someone made them stop. The kind they won't forget, Katie finally said. That afternoon, Katie walked home with Olivia for the first time. They lived in the same direction, just a few blocks apart. Do you really think standing up to them will work? Olivia asked. I don't know, Katie admitted, but doing nothing definitely won't work. I'm scared of what they might do next, Olivia said. Katie put a hand on her friend's shoulder. Don't be. I won't let them hurt you anymore. How can you stop them? Olivia asked. Katie looked away. I have my ways. That night, Katie trained harder than ever in the basement. Tomorrow was another day at Westview High, and she had a feeling things were about to change. The bullies make the fatal error of picking on the new girl. She fights like no other. Monday morning arrived with dark clouds and rain. Katie walked to school under an umbrella, thinking about the confrontation in the cafeteria. She knew Zach, and Heather wouldn't let it go. They would try something bigger now. Katie met Olivia by the front doors. Her friend looked nervous and kept glancing around. I haven't seen them yet, Olivia said quietly. Stay close to me today, Katie told her. We'll get through this together. Their first two classes passed without incident. During third period, Katie asked to use the bathroom. As she walked down the empty hallway, she heard voices coming from around the corner. She slowed down and listened. Today, during gym, Zach was saying, when Coach Allen steps out to take his phone call. He always does that about 20 minutes in, Steve replied. We'll corner her in the equipment room, Zach continued. Teach her to keep her mouth shut. What about her friend, the art girl? Greg asked. Heather and the girls will handle her, Zach said with a laugh. By the end of today, both of them will know their place. Katie backed away quietly and returned to class. She didn't say anything to Olivia yet. She didn't want a scare. Her and Katie needed time to think. Gym class was right after lunch. As they changed in the locker room, Katie noticed Heather and her friends watching Olivia with mean smiles. Stay where the teacher can see you, Katie whispered to Olivia. Why? What's going on? Olivia asked. They're planning something, Katie said. Just trust me. Coach Allen started class with jumping jacks and running laps around the gym. Then he split them into groups for volleyball. Katie made sure she and Olivia were in the same group. About 20 minutes into class, Coach Allen's phone rang. He looked at it and frowned. "Keep playing," he told the students. "I need to take this. I'll be right back." As soon as he left the gym, Heather walked over to Olivia. "Coach wants you to get more volleyballs from the equipment room," she said. Olivia looked at Katie, who shook her head slightly. "I don't think he does," Olivia said, her voice shaking a little. Heather's friendly smile disappeared. "Fine. We'll do this the hard way." She nodded to Ashley and Diana, who moved to either side of Olivia. Between them, they began pushing Olivia toward the equipment room door. "Stop it," Olivia said, trying to pull away. Katie stepped forward. "Leave her alone, Heather." "Mind your own business," Heather snapped. Other students had stopped playing volleyball to watch. No one moved to help. Katie saw Zach, Greg, and Steve moving toward them from across the gym. They had planned this well. The teacher gone, both Katie and Olivia isolated. "This is my business," Katie said calmly. "Olivia's my friend." "Not for long," Zach said as he reached them. He nodded to Greg and Steve. "Get the new girl into the equipment room, too." Greg grabbed Katie's arm. It was the moment Katie had been both expecting and dreading. She had promised her dad no fighting. But this wasn't about fighting. It was about protection. In one smooth movement, Katie twisted her arm free from Greg's grip. He looked surprised but reached for her again. This time, Katie sidestepped, him easily, using his own momentum to push him off balance. He stumbled forward, nearly falling. "What the hell?" Greg said, his face red with anger. Steve moved toward Katie now. He was bigger than Greg, a football player with strong arms. He tried to grab Katie around the waist, but she was too quick. She ducked under his arms and moved behind him, giving him a small push that sent him into Greg. Both boys stumbled. The gym was completely silent now. Everyone was watching with wide eyes. "She got lucky," Zach said with a nervous laugh. "Get her." Greg and Steve came at Katie together this time. Katie took a deep breath and let her training take over. She blocked Greg's grab with her forearm, then used his forward momentum to pull him past her. As he went by, she stuck out her foot slightly, causing him to trip and fall hard onto the gym floor. At the same time, she ducked Steve's wild punch and swept her leg in a low arc that caught him behind the knees. His legs went out from under him, and he landed flat on his back with a loud thud. Both boys lay on the floor, stunned. It had happened so fast that most students weren't even sure what they had seen. Zach stared at Katie in shock. Then his surprise turned to anger. He charged at her, fists raised. Katie didn't move until the last second. Then she sidestepped Zach's charge, caught his arm, and used his own force to flip him over her hip. Zach flew through the air and landed hard on his back. The wind knocked out of him. The gym erupted in gasps and whispers. Heather's mouth hung open in shock. Ashley and Diana had let go of Olivia and backed away. Katie stood calmly in the center of the gym, not even breathing hard. Greg was getting to his feet, his face twisted with rage. He ran at Katie again, swinging wildly. Katie blocked his punches easily, moving like a dancer around him. When she saw an opening, she grabbed his arm, twisted it behind his back, and pushed him gently but firmly to his knees. "Stay down," she said quietly. "It's over." "What is going on here?" Coach Allen's voice boomed across the gym as he walked back in. He took in the scene, Zach and Steve on the floor, Greg on his knees with Katie holding his arm, and the rest of the class standing in a circle watching. "She attacked us!" Heather shouted, pointing at Katie. "We were just talking and she went crazy." "That's not true," Olivia said, stepping forward. Her voice was shaking, but she spoke clearly. "They were trying to force me into the equipment room. Katie was protecting me." She flipped Zach over. "Her shoulder," a boy in the class said excitedly. "It was awesome." "I've got it all on video," another student called out, holding up a phone. Coach Allen frowned and looked at Katie, who had released Greg's arm and stepped back. "Miss Summers, explain yourself," he said. "They were going to hurt Olivia," Katie said simply. "I stopped them. I didn't hurt anyone." It was true. Despite how easily she had taken down the three boys, she hadn't actually injured any of them. Their pride was hurt worse than their bodies. Zach had gotten to his feet now, his face red with embarrassment and anger. "She's lying, we weren't doing anything wrong." "Let's see the video," Coach Allen said, holding out his hand for the student's phone. As the coach watched the video, his expression grew more serious. When it was done, he looked at Zach, Greg, and Steve with disappointment. "Principal's office. All of you now." He pointed at Zach and his friends, then at Katie. "Miss Summers, you too." "What about them?" Olivia asked, pointing at Heather and her friends. "They were part of it too." Coach Allen nodded. "Them too." As they all walked to the principal's office, students in the hallway stared and whispered. Word was spreading fast about what had happened in the gym. Zach walked as far from Katie as possible, shooting her angry looks. Heather was on her phone, probably texting her father, the principal. Katie felt a mix of emotions: relief that she had protected Olivia, worry about what would happen next, and a small feeling of satisfaction that the bullies had finally learned their lesson about picking on the new girl. Olivia walked beside Katie, looking at her with wide eyes. "Where did you learn to do that?" she whispered. "I've been training in mixed martial arts since I was 8, Katie said quietly. "I competed in tournaments before we moved here." "Why didn't you tell me?" Olivia asked. Katie shrugged. "I promised my dad I wouldn't fight anymore. At my old school, I got in trouble for fighting, even though I was just defending someone else. That's part of why we moved." "Do you think we're in trouble?" Olivia asked, looking worried. "Maybe," Katie said. "But we have the video, and we have the truth. That has to count for something." They reached the principal's office, where Mr. Mills was waiting for them, his face stern. Heather stood close to her father, already telling him her version of what happened. Katie took a deep breath. This would be the hardest fight yet. Not with fists or feet, but with words and truth. And she was ready for it. "The bullies make the fatal error of picking on the new girl. She fights like no other." Principal Mills sat behind his large desk, looking at the students standing before him. His eyes lingered on his daughter Heather, who was trying hard to look innocent. "Coach Allen has shown me the video," Principal Mills said in a serious voice. "I've also called all of your parents. They're on their way." Zach shifted nervously. His face still showed anger, but now there was worry too. Greg and Steve stared at the floor, avoiding eye contact with anyone. "Dad, she attacked us," Heather said, pointing at Katie. "We didn't do anything wrong." Principal Mills held up his hand to stop her. "The video shows a different story, Heather. I saw you and your friends trying to force Olivia into the equipment room. I saw these boys," he pointed at Zach, Greg, and Steve, "trying to grab Miss Summers." Heather's face turned red. She hadn't expected her father to see the video. "What I want to know," Principal Mills continued, looking at Katie, "is where you learned to fight like that. Coach Allen says he's never seen anything like it." Katie stood straight and looked the principal in the eye. "I've trained in mixed martial arts for 8 years, sir. I've competed in tournaments." "And yet you never mentioned this when you enrolled at our school," Principal Mills said. "I wasn't planning to use my training," Katie replied. "I promised my dad I wouldn't fight anymore, but I couldn't let them hurt Olivia." Principal Mills nodded slowly. "Miss Bennett, is it true that these students have bullied you before?" Olivia looked scared, but she nodded. "Yes, sir. For 2 years now." "Why didn't you report it?" he asked. Olivia looked down. "I did, sir, several times, to teachers and counselors. Nothing ever happened." Principal Mills frowned. "I was never informed of this." "That's because no one takes it seriously," Katie said. "I've been documenting everything since I got here." She pulled her notebook from her pocket. Times, dates, witnesses, everything they've done to Olivia and to me. The principal took the notebook and flipped through it, his frown deepening. "This is very detailed." The office door opened, and parents began to arrive. Katie's dad came in first, followed by Olivia's mother, then Zach's parents and the others. "What's going on?" Katie's dad asked, looking worried when he saw his daughter. "There was an incident in gym class," Principal Mills explained. He briefly told the parents what had happened and mentioned the video. Katie's dad looked at her with a mix of disappointment and concern. "Katie, you promised me." "I know, Dad," Katie said, "but they were going to hurt Olivia. I had to do something." Zach's father, a tall man in an expensive suit, stepped forward. "Are you saying my son was involved in bullying?" "The video clearly shows your son attempting to assault Miss Summers," Principal Mills said. "My son wouldn't do that," Zach's father insisted. "He's a good kid." "Maybe you should watch the video," Principal Mills suggested, turning his computer screen so everyone could see. The parents watched in silence as the video played. It showed exactly what had happened. Heather and her friends trying to force Olivia toward the equipment room, then Zach and his friends attempting to grab Katie. It also showed Katie's impressive self-defense moves. When the video ended, the room was quiet. Zach's father no longer looked so confident. Heather's mother was staring at her daughter with shock. Additionally, Principal Mills said, "Miss Summers has provided this notebook documenting a pattern of bullying behavior from these students." He held up Katie's notebook. "And Miss Bennett confirms that this has been going on for 2 years. 2 years. Olivia's mother looked at her daughter with tears in her eyes. "Why didn't you tell me it was this bad?" Olivia shrugged, looking miserable. "I didn't think anyone could stop it." "Well, it stops today," Principal Mills said firmly. "Bullying will not be tolerated at this school." He turned to Zach, Heather, and their friends. "You are all suspended for 2 weeks. When you return, you will be on probation for the rest of the year. Any further incidents will result in expulsion." "That's not fair," Heather protested. "Dad, you can't do this to me." "I can and I will," Principal Mills said, his voice stern. "I've been blind to what's been happening in this school, maybe because I didn't want to see it. But that ends now." He turned to Katie. "As for you, Miss Summers, fighting is against school rules, even in self-defense." Katie nodded, accepting whatever punishment was coming. "However," Principal Mills continued, "the video clearly shows you were protecting yourself and Miss Bennett. You used reasonable force and didn't actually injure anyone, so there will be no suspension. But I do want you to speak with our counselor about better ways to handle conflict." "Yes, sir," Katie said, relief in her voice. "I have one more question," Principal Mills said. "Miss Summers, would you be willing to teach a self-defense class for students who have experienced bullying? Under supervision, of course." Katie looked surprised. Yes, I'd be happy to." "Good," Principal Mills nodded. "Now, all of you can go home for the day. We'll sort out the details tomorrow." As they left the office, Zach glared at Katie. "This isn't over," he muttered. Katie met his eyes calmly. "Yes, it is," she said. "Unless, you want another demonstration?" Zach looked away first, his face red with anger and embarrassment. Outside the school, Katie and Olivia sat on a bench waiting for their parents to finish talking with the principal. "I can't believe you stood up for me like that," Olivia said. "No one's ever done that before." Katie smiled. "That's what friends do." "And now you're going to teach self-defense classes," Olivia said. "Will you teach me?" "Of course," Katie replied. "Everyone should know how to protect themselves." The news of what had happened in gym class spread quickly through the school and the town. By the next morning, everyone knew about the new girl who had taken down 3 boys using martial arts. When Katie arrived at school the next day, things were different. Students she had never spoken to smiled and said hello. A few even asked if she would really be teaching self-defense classes. At lunch, Katie and Olivia found their usual table occupied by a group of students who waved them over. "Can we sit with you guys?" a girl named Lily asked. "That was so cool. What you did yesterday." More students joined them, and soon their table was full of people talking and laughing. Katie noticed that many of them were kids who had been quiet before, who had kept their heads down and tried to be invisible, just like she had when she first arrived. A week later, Katie held her first self-defense class in the gym after school. She expected maybe 5 or 6 students to show up. Instead, more than 20 came, including some of the teachers. "I'm not teaching you how to fight," Katie explained as they gathered around her. "I'm teaching you how to be strong, how to stand up for yourselves, and how to protect each other." Olivia stood beside her, no longer the shy, scared girl she had been. In just a week, she had started to change, standing taller, speaking up more in class. 2 weeks later, Zach, Heather, and their friends returned from suspension. But the school had changed in their absence. The fear they had once used to control others was gone. Students walked the hallways with confidence, knowing they weren't alone anymore. Heather tried once to make a mean comment about Olivia's artwork, but 3 other students immediately stood up for her. Zach attempted to trip a freshman in the hallway, but the boy used a move Katie had taught him to keep his balance and kept walking. By the end of the month, Zach and Heather had lost their power completely. They still sat together at lunch, but their group was smaller now. Some of their former friends had apologized for their behavior and joined other groups. One afternoon, Katie found Ashley, one of Heather's former friends, waiting for her after her self-defense class. "Can I join next time?" Ashley asked, looking nervous. "I don't want to be like Heather anymore. I want to be strong like you." Katie smiled. "The class is open to everyone," she said. "Even former bullies who want to change." As Katie walked home with Olivia that day, she thought about her first day at Westview High. She had wanted to be invisible then, to just get through the year without trouble. Instead, she had found her voice, used her strength, and helped others find their courage. "What are you thinking about?" Olivia asked. "About how sometimes the hardest fights are the ones most worth fighting," Katie replied. "I'm glad you fought. This one," Olivia said with a smile. Katie nodded. "Me too." The bullies had indeed made a fatal error when they picked on the new girl, but their defeat hadn't come just from Katie's fighting skills. It had come from her courage to stand up, to speak out, and to show others they could do the same. And that was the greatest victory of all.